When you think of fan fictions, what do you think of? Do you think of those cringy, creepy, smutty of popular movies and shows and animes or whatever? Because I don't blame you. If that's what you think, I do not blame you, because that is what we have been told. That is what we have been exposed to through movies like After, which was an absolute shit show, by the way. Just putting that out there, it was horrible. So we've always been exposed to stuff like that. So obviously we're going to have a skewed perspective of what fan fictions are out there because we've only seen the bad side of it. Now, as someone who has scoured AO3 through multiple fandoms, I promise you, there is equally horrific as there are incredibly well-written fan fictions. And if you are someone who's into fan fictions and you've clicked on this video, you can back me up on this. There's weird ones and there's amazing ones that should be novels and movies. We're gonna put aside all those weird toxic relationship, enemies to lovers kind of fan fictions that After is and all those movies. Because bro, they're so bad. We're gonna put those aside. And we are going to be talking about the good side of fanfiction. And I'm going to be putting forward my recommendation for the next movie fanfiction. Now, this one that I'm going to talk about, two things I want to address first. First of all, it is already a novel. It's not the best fanfiction I've read just because I have a personal preference to another one, but it is probably it's the most well-written fanfiction I've read because it's so unique. I feel like so many movies and books nowadays are so recycled when it comes to the plot. And we need something new. And if this fanfiction turns into a movie, it's wholesome. There's like no smut. It is romance, but it's not in the way you're thinking. Second point that I want to address is the fanfiction it's written about is quite a controversial one. I am going to be changing the name of the people in this fanfiction so that you get an unbiased perspective of what this story is. I will tell you who the fanfiction is about at the end of this video. I have redone this video so many times because the actual summary of this story is very complicated and I've tried to simplify it as much as possible. Because it's so long, there's a lot of details I'm not going to cover in this summary, and because of that, I just want you to know that it's probably not going to sound as good as it actually is because the little details and the little plot twists and like the way it's been written makes it so amazing, but I will get the general idea of it through here. Let's start. Gregory is a lonely man who's just moved into an old rundown house. This house has a disconnected rotary phone. Somehow he gets a phone call one night on this phone. He answers it and this guy named Damien is calling him on the other side, and this guy named Damien was actually meant to call one of his friends, but somehow he either got the number wrong or it reconnected to call Gregory. Now these two start talking because they're on the phone and they're just like, oh yeah, like who are you kind of thing. Now it turns out Damien is actually from 1970 and Gregory is from present day. Now that sounds confusing, but I'm gonna keep it really simple so that it doesn't get overwhelming in a summary because it makes a lot of sense in the actual book because it's drawn out. So basically they start comparing notes and they're like, oh, this is a prank call, you're not actually from the future. And they're like, what do you mean you're from the past? Hasn't this person been shot yet? Do you not know about this thing and this thing in history? And then the next day Damien calls Gregory and he's like, how did you know this person was gonna get shot today? And they just start comparing things and it's like, oh, this is legit, like we're actually crossing timelines. So then they start finding ways to actually cross through the timeline. And I don't mean they physically cross through, I mean Damien and Gregory actually live in the same house. But Damien lives in that house in 1970 and Gregory lives in that house now. So Damien finds out that if he buries things in the garden or if he hides things in the walls, then Gregory will actually be able to find it in the future. Like to give Gregory flowers. He goes to this flower shop and he gets seeds and he hides them in the wall. Then Gregory gets the seeds and he plants flowers and he's like, oh, my flower grew today, thank you for the flower, to Damien. Damien hides a time machine in the backyard with like little things and then Gregory digs it up. Now after Gregory has dug up this time machine, he meets his new neighbor. Now his new neighbor's name is Alphonse, or we're calling him Alphonse for this thing if you can't tell I'm watching Full Metal Alchemist. Alphonse and him start becoming friends as well. Don't worry, this is not a love triangle situation, so this is kind of the only like real life friend that Gregory has. Now this is important later on, it's not super relevant right now. But back to Damien and Gregory. They both kind of realize the situation they've got going on isn't exactly ideal because they're never going to meet each other. They can only communicate through the phone. They end up sitting next to the phone for hours at a time. And it's just not healthy because it's different things. Like, it's not a relationship that could work. So Damien kind of realizes, okay, well, I'm holding him back because I'm from the past. I need to just let him go. Back to present day. Alphonse and Gregory are friends now. And Alphonse calls Gregory over to do babysitting and they help each other out and it's just neighborly stuff. One day, Alphonse actually invites Gregory out to dinner with his family because he's kind of adopted Gregory almost in as an uncle or whatever. Now, when they're at dinner, they get a call from the hospital and the hospital says, Alphonse, your dad, can you see where this is going? Your dad is dying, you need to come to the hospital. Now, the dad had been in hospital for quite a while. It was a terminal disease, but they rushed there. And then the nurse also says on the phone, your dad also said that you must bring Gregory. And Damien obviously is Alphonse's dad if you haven't connected that yet. Gregory has no idea about this. He has not connected this at all. He gets to the hospital and he basically sits there and watches Damien die, but Damien's an old man because it's current day, whatever. For anyone who hasn't connected how this worked, Alphonse is Damien's son. And how did Alphonse know about Gregory? Like, how did this connection happen? Well, basically, Damien gave Alphonse, his son, gave him a notebook that basically documents all these different events to prove that Gregory is real. And to kind of explain this, he would have a notebook and Alphonse was walking through the street when he had just moved into the area before he met Gregory. And in the notebook, it would say, your next door neighbor, Gregory, is digging up the garden to try and find a time machine on this date. And then he would look at the dates and he'd be like, oh, my next door neighbor's digging up his garden. What was that about? And then he'd be like, your next door neighbor is going to be planting this kind of flower on this date. And then he would go into the garden and he'd be like, oh, what? He's planting that exact flower on that day. Like, how is this happening? So basically, Alphonse, it got proved to him that this was legit. And that's kind of how he knew to kind of keep closer, I guess, to Gregory. But then, yes, back to present day. Gregory has just seen Damien die in the hospital. And so he is obviously distraught, even though this is an older guy that he had only just met properly. He is distraught. So he gets home and he gets one final call from Damien. Now, he knows this is the end of them, kind of thing. And Damien basically says on the phone, like, he says something heartbreaking like flowers from 1970 don't belong in this, or how can I live in 2021 when my heart belongs in 1970? It was like some heartbreaking line. There's a bunch of little quotes from it, so I can't remember what it was, but there's a heartbreaking line. And Alphonse, obviously knowing this is the last call that's going to happen, and he knows that Gregory is not going to hang up the phone, he is instructed in the notebook that Damien left him to go over to Gregory's house and to cut the line once and for all. So there is no more possible communication between the two of them. So just as Gregory is like sobbing into the phone, being like, you can't not call me again, like this can't be the end, Alphonse cuts the line. And that's the end of the story. It is devastating. I promise. I don't know if it sounds that sad when I sum it up like this, but the whole build up and everything, I was sobbing. But yeah, so that's basically the summary. Now, I want you to go into the comments and tell me right now, do you think that would make a cool movie or series, at least compared to the current fanfiction movies that are out there? Would you rather watch something like this or watch another toxic relationship, they sleep with each other for 2.5 hours in the movie kind of situation? Like, which one? Like, why do they make that a movie and then leave stuff like this that is so creative? Like, if you guys read it, you'll understand how many more small details there are. There's like little details about the actual gardener of the shop and blah, blah, blah. Now, what ties all of this together? And this will either make it better for you or it will make you be like, oh, what the hell? This ruined the fanfic. Oh, I feel like you're gonna hate this when you figure this out. Gregory is actually George Not Found, and Damien is Dream. So it's a Dream SMP fanfiction. Alphonse was actually Wilbur. It's a whole Dream SMP fanfiction. And that makes people be like, oh, that sucks, why would you read that? But before I told you it was a Dream SMP fanfiction, it was a pretty cool plot, right? I'm pretty sure in the novel, as far as I know, the actual written novel for copyright reasons has had the names removed and changed, and that's what would happen if they made it into a movie anyway, so it wouldn't even be a Dream SMP thing. So yeah, tell me what your opinion is on this, but I really would like to see this fanfiction turned into a movie.